everybody. This is episode 81 of our podcast, Artificial Intelligence and Cybersurgery. My name is Andrew Gums. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Vincent Grasso. This is episode 81, I believe.
Yeah, 81.
Vincent, please introduce our next guest.
Well, it's a great pleasure to have on Stefano Pomati. He's an interesting guy. He's engineer by training. He works at Asensus Surgical. His training is out of the Politecnico in Milano, and he's got a lot of very interesting insights to give us on the state of the affairs in robotics and surgical robotics. So, welcome to the podcast, Stefano.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So Stefano, I like to always start out first knowing where you're from, where you're born, where you grew up, so we can get an idea. As you know, we were talking in Italian earlier. Vincent obviously has an Italian background, so we'd love to hear about where you're from and where you're from in Italy.
Fantastic. So, I believe I can speak very good about Italy, and you will understand me. So, I'm Italian. I was born in Milan, where I lived for almost 30 years. Then I moved to north part of Milan, near Monza, where the Formula One Grand Prix take place, and actually is where I'm speaking from now. So I live here in the green Brianza, and it's a nice place to stay.
Brianzolo.
Brianzolo, yeah. But I miss a bit the big town, the big city, and I always say that Milan is the most beautiful city in the world. And actually, after the Expo, I guess after the Olympic Games, this is quite true. There are nice, beautiful cities around, but I have passed my first part of my life. My parents are still there. My good friends are there. So I love Milan, and I'm always there. And actually, I commute almost every day to go to the office. So
okay.
Actually, yeah.
So you started as an engineer, and did you go directly into working with robotics, or did you start somewhere else first? I'd be curious to figure out how you ended up at a surgical robotics company.
Yeah, that was fun, Andrew. So I studied informatics science at Politecnico di Milano, and when you miss 2 years of study, you can choose if going to study, let's say, pure informatics, system informatics, and we were very nerd engineers, so we were saying informatics squared, or you could choose more a path where you were more involved in automation, robotics, industrial automation. So I chose robotics, and actually when I did my first exam about robotics, I fall in love for robotics, and I started to add to my exam plans a lot of exams about robotics, vision, controlling system, and so on. And then last year, I was missing 3 exams before graduating. A friend of mine who was a square engineer, who was more nerd than me, came to me and said, "Hey, Stefano, my father," and this father was the director of gynecology in an important hospital in the south of Milan. "My father would like you to introduce him, your professor of robotics, because he would like a robot like Da Vinci, but costing less." So, Francesco, I told him, was the name of my mate. I don't know what you're saying, but let's do it. I will introduce my professor of robotics to your father, but the two of us will join my expertise in robotics, your expertise in being a nerd informatic, and we will do the project. By the way, does your father have any other requirements? Yeah, he told me that he would like tactile feedback, because Da Vinci doesn't, and also bipolar instruments, because Da Vinci, and so maybe you can guess my age, it was 20 years ago, Da Vinci doesn't have. So I say, Francesco, no clue what your guys are saying, but let's go. So we went to my professor, and actually we started the project at the university. We went first in the OR to learn more, and I found out a very messy and complicated environment, Andrew. And Vincent. So really, I found out that you can do robotics, you can be precise, you can add dexterity, but this is a very messy environment. So maybe we can take this later. And anyway, we started the university. We took a very small robotic arm with a huge control unit. We took our PlayStation joystick, we cut the wire, connected a RS-232 cable behind the control box. We used a real-time operating system that was at the time free of charge, the QNX, and we started to write down the software to drive laparoscopic instruments. By the way, the surgeon was buying laparoscopic instruments from an Italian pharmaceutical company based between Bergamo and Milan, that actually was a pharmaceutical company but had a small division, a small department of laparoscopic instruments. We were buying instruments from Germany, marking SOFAR, SPA, and they were reselling in Italy. So basically, they gave us some instruments, and they were looking with interest at us. So they started to give instruments. We never gave them back. We cut the handle. We connected to the robot in some way, and we started to drive with a PlayStation joystick the robot. Long story short, we were almost successful, but of course, we didn't have enough resources at the university. We identified a haptic console, actually, because you remember when the surgeon was asking for tactile feedback, but the university couldn't buy us. Accessing the robot was always a scarce resource in the university. So Francesco, my mate, quit the project. So I finished my 3 exams. I wrote down an email to the professor of
Francesco's
gynecology.
father was the surgeon.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Umberto was the surgeon. And so I wrote back an email to Umberto, and sometimes when I think about this email, probably it's what made changed my life for the past 20 years. I sent an email to him, hey, Francesco quit, your son quit, but I still want to do this work. And so I said, yeah, Stefano, come back to the OR, see again, and we will find a solution. So I came back to the OR, I came back to my professor of robotics, and she told me, hey, I know a guy in a research center of a European Commission near Maggiore Lake who has a lab. They are doing software for controlling robots in nuclear environments, but I know he would like to try to apply his software to another field, which is not only robotics, not only nuclear, sorry. So long story short, I was able to join this research center called the JRC, Joint Research Center. I was able to enter in this lab and start using their resources, their lab, also paid by the European Commission, supported by the European Commission, and we bought an industrial robot, the laparoscopic haptic console, and we had this software available. So I remember I left Milan. My father was a Monday morning, gave him his almost brand new car and say, Stefano, I feel better if you drive there with my new car. I know it will be only 1 year, you will stay away, so don't worry, I will use yours. And actually I stayed there for 8 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
actually, it was not exactly a good prediction from my father. So he's
you kept the new car for 8 years?
Yes, exactly. When I gave him back at the 9th year, and he just used for 1 year, and we said, okay, not this time. Yeah, it was funny, but actually, supported by the European Commission, with the pharmaceutical company starting to pay me and other guys, we actually started to do things seriously. So first of all, we assembled stuff, like I told you, lap console with tactile feedback, robotic arm, 4 torque sensors, because of course you need to feel the forces and the torques. But then after the first proof of concept, mock-up was successful. The surgeon, Umberto, said, good job. We started to actually design our own arm. Of course, the team grown, not so much, but grown. And we started to develop our first fully designed and manufactured prototype. All the mistakes you can imagine in a robot were in this prototype. All the mistakes. I mean, really, we made a lot of failure, but based on this, we did a second prototype.
Trial and error, reinforcement
Exactly.
learning, baby. Yeah, that's the way.
Exactly.
The only way. Yeah.
We did a third one, and actually, the third one was almost ready for prime time. Almost, because, of course, again, making big mistakes. We did everything without reading the C certification norms before. Right. So when we started to deal with the C norms, We started to deal with the notified, exactly. Also because the biggest machine, the notified body, the Italian notified body, had cleared before us was a machine for aerosol. So now we're talking about a robot for doing laparoscopy, and we were comparing everything with maybe a TSE TAC or RMI machine that was, I mean, a bit more complicated. So you can imagine how we had that again to do trials and error. But long story short, in October 2013, we did the first human case at the Gemelli Hospital in Rome. Why not in Milan? Because then the surgeon quit his job. Yeah.
But just to back up, so Asensus is an Italian company. This is news to me.
No, it's not actually.
Okay, all right, hold on. So
no,
keep going with your story then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we were still part of SOFA.
This, by the way, is one of my favorite podcasts of all time. This is fascinating, your story. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, sometimes I feel like an old man telling his history, but I love it. Yeah, no, sorry. I was hired by Sofar, this Italian pharmaceutical company. And the founder of Sofar, who was a family-owned company, was putting his own money to the project as he was believing in it. Unfortunately, he was not able to see the first human case because he passed away before, but his daughters and the new CEO believe in us a lot. So they invested in us, and actually we did this amazing first case again in GYN in Rome, not in Milan because Umberto quit his activity for some different reasons, but actually we did this procedure at the hospital of Professor Giovanni Scambia, who was an amazing surgeon, and he had an amazing team. So we had an amazing time there. So
this was what year? Around what year was this?
2013.
Wow, 2013. Long time ago.
Long time ago. Okay. 2013, so 2 years. And actually, we were a small Italian company with a few engineers and few other clinicians trying to compete with intuitive Da Vinci.
I always heard about this Italian robot. That's why I'm so interested to finally hear the story.
Yeah. The name was Alfix. Why? Because the founder of the Italian company name was Alfonso. So we wanted to call the robot Alfonse. It was a sort of acronym. He said, no, I don't like my name. I don't want our robot having the same name. So we shorted it down and we called Alfex, that is augmented laparoscopy through force reflection. And the X is the reflection, CT part of the reflection part. So actually, the CEO of SOFAR was smart enough to understand that it was impossible for us to compete against intuitive Da Vinci, or compete is a big word, or anyway, say something in this word, being such a small company. So Transenterix, now Asensus, a company founded in 2006 in North Carolina, dealing first with a single port instrument, then developing a robot to keep the single port instrument, started to look at interest to us. And actually, in September 2015, they acquired us. They acquired the department of robotics.
What year?
2015.
15, okay.
2015. They acquired, the numbers are public, so they acquired for almost $100 million. The department, I had, I think, 50 millions. I'm kidding. I was an employee, but an happy employee. So of course, the deal was based on stock, based on money. But I mean, it was a fantastic time for us. We were so our department, the department of the Italian pharmaceutical company, was acquired by Transenterix, now Asensus, and we became American. We immediately became a global company, American headquarters, Italian office. Then we had other field-based people in Europe. Then we opened an office in Japan. 3 years after, we acquired a company in Israel. Why? Because our CEO was already looking as a vision for AI embedded in robotic system, because like we said, it's not only robotics, not anymore, and it was not in 2018. So step back, in 2017, we had the FDA clearance for our robot. The robot name changed from Alfix to Sense, so enhancing through sense. That makes sense, no?
Okay.
In this context, we had
I always wondered what Senhance means, but now that you say it, it makes sense. Yeah.
enhancing through sense. Why? Because we still have the force feedback. We have the eye tracker to drive the camera. So sense it's a big part of our system. And actually, we were the second company obtaining the FDA clearance for soft tissue laparoscopy in robotics. Second, after the first one, of course, Intuitive Da Vinci, and we came almost 18 years after, so 17 point something years after. So we did something amazing, and actually the world changed for us. So we became a bigger company. We started to invest massively in our commercialization, and it was amazing time. So fast forward. Yeah, sorry, you want to make a question, Andrew?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm fast forwarding a little bit just so I have an idea about how many Senhance robots have been deployed around the world. So I have an idea. Just give me,
So
or in America,
around,
in Europe. Yeah.
I would say less than 50.
Okay.
Less than 50. And actually, that was also a lesson we learned. A lesson we learned that actually Da Vinci is not only a great system, they are not only, anyway, I mean, a great company, but also they were able to demonstrate the world or convince the world that anyway, dexterity inside the body is important. And why I'm saying this? Because Sense has straight instruments, 3 and 5 millimeter, as articulated instrument, but not wristed. And in such competitive environment, in US market in particular, not having a wristed instrument was something that actually a bit. So we had success in Europe.
But what do you mean you're articulating but not wristed? Were you able
our
to?
Instrument,
They
our
just
instrument
turned
can
on
bend,
one axis.
and can rotate on the tip.
Okay. Well,
But
that's not
anyway,
bad. I mean, it's partially wristed. So
I mean,
how many degrees of freedom, just so I understand,
the,
what's the number?
the number is the same as Da Vinci 7 at the end of the day, but implemented in a different way. Implemented in a different way and actually driven by laparoscopic-like console,
So for
laparoscopic-like
instance,
handles.
when you want it to go like this, do you have to hit a button? You can't move your wrist?
You need to hit a button,
Ah,
rotate your handles, and so
I got it.
our interface it's
So
laparoscopic-like.
so for me to understand it, maybe our listeners to understand it, when you say wristed, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're mainly mean like the surgeon's instruments work like wrists, not necessarily on the inside. Because
I
because
mean,
what I'm hearing, this
yeah.
is almost like a philosophical question. What I'm hearing is that on the inside there is a wrist, but the on the outside, what the surgeon is handling, there is no wrist. Is that a safe assumption? It doesn't look like it.
Um, I mean, it's an interesting. I understand what you mean. So let's say in this way, the degrees of freedom
Yeah.
are 7,
On the
like the
inside,
human
yeah,
on the inside, like the human arm. Uh, Da Vinci and Sense implements in a different way. Visa also reflects how you control these degrees of freedom from outside.
yeah,
So I think that if you have a wrist inside, and wrist I mean pitch and yaw movement, pitch
yeah,
and yaw, you should also have some sort of pitch and yaw movement outside to control it better. We have more an articulation and rotation of the tip, and actually our handles are not considered are more laparoscopic like with an additional degrees of
yeah.
freedom
No, I get it.
to drive the angle. So probably wrist inside is better driven from a wrist outside or from
Yeah.
working like if you're in an open environment, open surgery, but actually you're operating in minimal invasive. So
See, I'm
did I
so
reply?
yeah, excellent. I'm so interested by this because surgeons don't understand these subtleties. Because for instance, now if you're about to market to me an instrument with 7 degrees of freedom, and you say that's what Da Vinci has, it's hard to articulate this difference that you actually expressed, that it's not wristed, but it has 7 degrees of freedom. I think most surgeons, correct me if I'm wrong, Vincent, would have assumed that something with 7 degrees of freedom is also wristed. And I know it's obvious to you, Stefano,
Mm.
but I would love to work with you in the future. We just had a big consensus conference about definitions, about
Okay.
robotics, artificial intelligence surgery, cyber surgery, non-invasive surgery, et cetera, et cetera. But another thing I would like to work on is even, what we just talked about, what wristed is, as opposed to, explaining the difference in degrees of freedom, but also haptics, because haptics involves multiple different things, not just force feedback, right? So when people say there's no haptics, they're correct. There's one aspect of haptics with force feedback, but all the other aspect of haptics don't exist, for instance, with current robotic systems, or am I incorrect?
You're correct. You're correct. Sometimes it's a buzzword.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's used improperly. Indeed, I prefer to say force sensing, which
yeah,
is what the system does. And then the way you give it back could be force feedback, could be tactile feedback, which is probably where
yeah,
no one is there yet, or could be considered haptic feedback, which is probably sometimes is more referred to the force between the jaws. But I agree with you, could be more philosophical and it's a matter of definition. And I'm a strong supporter of uniforming definitions. And indeed, when I listened to you in Porto, Andrew, you had a slide with all the potential definitions of cyber surgery, digital
digital
laparoscopy.
surgery. Yeah, yeah,
And I appreciate it a lot because I think we need to make this effort in order to spread the right wording, the right way of calling things. And I think we can do something also in the force feedback environment, and also like we discussed in the degrees of freedom, like
yeah.
articulated risk, because you're right. At the end of the day, the surgeon doesn't know this, and it's correct that he doesn't, he or she doesn't. But we need better in explaining the differences and letting them choose if possible. So, um,
This brings me to like, a pet peeve of mine is how we talk about telemanipulation as robotic surgery. So, I consider it at best robotic assisted surgery. I won't get into to the levels of autonomy because I know you know them better than I do. But do you like to call it robotic surgery, the Senhance, the Da Vinci, or do you think of it more as a telemanipulator, or you know, good luck with that question. Help me understand that from your point of view.
hmm,
And let me throw another curveball at you. We also we try to refine the definition of cobotic surgery or cobotic assisted surgery. And on further thought, cobotic and cobotic assisted are two different things, right? Cobotic assisted or collaborative in general, as surgeons, we like to, at least according to Aon's My Society, we like to consider it where the surgeon is local to the operating field as opposed to
okay,
distant, like at a sitting at a console. So that's one aspect of collaborative robotics assisted.
collaborative
The
robot.
surgeon the
Okay,
surgeon is attached, right? Um, and robotic, if anything. Well, robotic and robotic assisted is, with there's a distance. That is our understanding. But collaborative also implies that the robot does something on its own, interprets something on its own. Like, the staplers that they sense the tissue
okay.
thickness, they slow down and all that. So I know I just gave you a whole big topic and we don't have enough time to get into it, but suffice it to say, are you okay with us calling the current systems robotic surgery?
Great question. Great question. So I am a robotic engineer,
Yeah,
and I like to call it robotic, but because yes, it's a robot, and this, I mean, calling robotics can be everything. I mean, a robot can be telemanipulated, can run autonomously a software that does repetitive task, can does autonomous task, and based on the context, can make different decisions, not program in advance. So telemanipulation, man in the loop, software, for example, for the robots mounting cars, software that is repeated periodically and the robot does always the same task, or robot looking at the space and based on the context doing something. So probably we are more in the autonomous part. So they are all robotics. And I guess I like this definition because in surgery we are doing this journey. No, right now they are all telemanipulated. At least, sorry, all in the field that I work in. So in the soft tissue one, but for example in orthopedic, there are already autonomous tasks done. Or you presented a system that could be considered a robot that does autonomous tasks. No, so probably depending on where you are using this robot, we are in a different step of this journey. So I'm okay in calling robot. And then, yes, right now in soft
And
tissues, they are all telemanipulated. Yeah.
For me, I look at the word robot from the original Czech, which means servant or slave, robota, I believe.
Robot, yeah.
And so for me, a robot is, and I think, a lot of lay people, a robot is something that is fully autonomous. That's why when I think of robotic surgery, I think of a device that is fully autonomous, has no input from a human, if you will. So I'm okay with the term robotic assisted because the robot is assisting. And then I like collaborative robotic because the robot is assisting and the human is assisting. So as you can see, the terminology is very confusing. They're overlapping.
It is.
You know,
It
so so
is.
so this is kind of why I always struggle with getting the right definition. But I agree with you. You know, it's the word that people use for better or worse, and we have to get used to that. Um,
But you're right that sometimes I heard pushback of people saying, "This is not a robot." Why? It is. I mean, it has joints, it has links, so it's a robot by definition of the book I studied at the university. No, because it's not autonomous. You're right. So sometimes people associate a robot to autonomy, which is not actually by definition, but I think this it's a good input for trying to find a better definition for what you are doing because we are in a unique field, and so probably yeah we
and
could find.
the issue is what we struggle with as surgeons and robotic surgeons is at the end of the day, if there's a complication, whose fault is it? This is why it's such a sensitive topic, you know? Is it a
Good
problem of the
point.
robot, the manufacturer, the surgeon? Is it a mixture? And as things and do we ever want something truly robotic? Do we ever want the robot to do the entire procedure? You know, for some procedures, it can be autonomous, like LASIK surgery, right? The surgeon
Hmm.
just, I think they cut the cornea, I believe, and they expose it. Then the LASIK machine does the actual, remodulation of the lens autonomously. But then again, the surgeon closes the eyelid, the cornea again.
Yeah.
But as for humanity, do we want things to be completely autonomous? And obviously, you can't answer that, but this is why it's such a important topic, you
Yeah.
know.
In this moment, I think it's more important that to have some contextual intelligence. So it's something I believe in.
Yes, we only have about just over 6 minutes. So,
Yeah.
please tell us, Senhance, what is Senhance's vision for incorporating more and more AI, more autonomy, more computer vision? Because you're a very exciting company. I've heard a lot about you for many, many years, but as you mentioned, it's hard for me to get in to see your device because it's just not as installed as much. So
Okay.
give us some insights to where you guys are headed in the future, in like the dawn of, or the AI surgery era.
Okay. So first of all, one missing part from my history is that 1 year and few months ago, car stores acquired 100% Asensus Surgical. So this is the missing part, and now I think all the dots are connecting, and car stores has a unique opportunity to be impactful not only with the robot but with
Great
all
company,
the ecosystem.
great marriage, fantastic.
Great,
Wow.
Mayor. So, and in this context, it's still a public information. So I'm sharing something that it's well known. We are working on a next gen platform. So to reply to your question, I will reply not on the product, Sense, and the next platform will be is called already Luna, and we are still working on it. But
Luna, interesting choice.
Luna, fantastic Italian name, and also love it.
No, but there's another device with a similar name,
I know.
in
Exactly.
English, anyway.
In English, I agree. But so I would talk more about our vision, which is creating a new category, which is called performance guided surgery, which is actually it's something that I wanted to discuss with you when I saw your slide with definition. So we call about this new category, so performance guided surgery, which is a surgical performance elevated by advanced visualization, intelligent robotics, and operative efficiency. And I guess we said the robot plus the eye, visualization, all the surgeons say, I want to see better, I want to see more, and operative efficiency, because the workflow optimization, because having information in the context, this is what actually is needed. So to reply to your question, our vision is actually the category we are creating, so performance guided surgery, and Luna, it's the robot implementing it, but not only, because AI, it's the missing part. So we are talking about pillars, no, of this performance guided surgery. One, it's robotics to decrease your your physical load, to give the surgeon back the degrees of freedom that they lost through minimal invasive surgery, to improve ergonomy. It's not only this part, it's also AI, that we prefer to say augmented intelligence, not artificial. Artificial is replacing. Augmented is augmenting surgeon capabilities that are augmenting the capability of the surgeon, decreasing his her cognitive load. And plus, of course, optimizing everything in the workflow, and stores is well positioned to do this. And so at the end of the day, we will fix many of the issues of the variability that impact outcomes. Our end goal is improve surgical outcome, to improve the quality of surgery worldwide, independently of experience of the surgeon, independently of the geography you are, independently of the money of your country or your hospital. Everyone should have the same standard level of care. And so this is our vision, maybe it's our mission. Yeah. And I think now, thanks to stores, thanks to all our ideas, we are well positioned to obtain there.
Stefano, I love Storts because Mrs. Storts gave me sponsorship so I could do my minimally invasive hepatic and pancreatic biliary fellowship in Paris many, many years ago. So I'm so wonderfully excited to hear what Storts is doing and that you're part of it. And we definitely have to be in touch because
absolutely,
because we're so aligned on so many things. I want Vincent to close us out because we only have a few more minutes, and I want to end maybe for 30 seconds so we can talk quickly. So Vincent, I'll let you close us out.
All right, thank you. It was great to have Stefano Pomati on our podcast. He's an engineer extraordinaire and has, I think, a very interesting business mind as well. So he's from Asensus Surgical. This is episode 81 of our podcast. Yeah, we're very excited to have you again on the show again, Stefano, and speak some more.